it's here and it's now. Just move every bone to the cosmic powwow. Cosmic powwow. Cosmic powwow.
Welcome to Toward a Quality of Life. Today I'm going to talk about the 44th President of the United States. Some of you like him, some of you don't, so be it. But if you could at least bear with me, no matter what your position, to see if there is some validity, some truth in what I'm going to talk to you about. And that is about the sort of dissociation and unrealistic nature of a lot of what this current president is doing and potentially will do as time moves on. I start with a quote from what he calls his very much trusted advisor, someone who's like family to him, someone who met him through the Chicago political machine for which she worked, of which she was a part of an influential family and so on, and met Mr. Obama, the 44th President of the United States, when Michelle, his wife, interviewed for a job and got it through this person, and then, of course, then met Barack Obama and ultimately came to be a very close confidant of his and is on a first-name basis with him, supposedly very comfortable with him in the White House, although under the stress that reports are saying is going on in the White House since the November 2nd election and building up to it, there might be a lot of tension between people, and a lot of people have called for Mr. Obama to get some new blood of the people, to change the people that are close to him and advising him and so on. But thus far, he's not done that, and the same core few people, there is sort of a very limited number of people that are in the inner circle helping the president out. And she is one of them, and her name is Valerie Jarrett. And I'm going to start this lecture with what she said about Mr. Obama in a book written by David Remnick and quoted from her. She said, "I think Barack knew that he had God-given talents that were extraordinary. He knows exactly how smart he is. He knows how perceptive he is. He knows what a good reader of people he is. And he knows that he has the ability, the extraordinary, uncanny ability, to take 1,000 different perspectives, digest them, and make sense out of them. And I think that he has never really been challenged intellectually. So what I sensed in him was not just a restless spirit, but somebody with such extraordinary talents that he had to be really taxed in order for him to be happy. He's been bored to death his whole life. He's just too talented to do what ordinary people do." So that's Ms. Jarrett's take on him, that he knows exactly how smart he is. And of course, she buys right into that and believes in it apparently wholeheartedly as well, saying he's too talented to do what ordinary people do. Mr. Obama himself in 2008 was quoted by Mr. Gaspard, who became a political director for him at that time. Mr. Obama is quoted as saying to Mr. Gaspard when he was interviewing for the job, when Gaspard was interviewing to be the political director for Mr. Obama, Mr. Obama said to him, "I think that I'm a better speechwriter than my speechwriters. I know more about policies on any particular issue than my policy directors, and I'll tell you right now that I'm going to think I'm a better political director than my political director." So this is the Obama, and another aide said recently that Mr. Obama, whenever he's in a room with people, he always thinks that he's the smartest person in the room. I hope that you can see offhand that this is kind of a dangerous and not good idea for somebody to be sure that he's very smart and for the people around him to be smart, especially short of real results that come out as being smart. So I intend to show that given this kind of a sense about himself by those that were close to him, and maybe now you do hear a lot of discomforting things coming out from people who are connected closer or a little more further away from the White House, that some people are having second thoughts, maybe not about how intellectually able Mr. Obama is, but what the heck is he doing, and why can't he respond the way a leader should respond? I will tell you first, too, regarding him being not quite realistic and down to earth in reality, where you roll up your sleeves, you get to work, and you really do the nitty-gritty stuff that would be required like no other job known to man in being the President of the United States. The first great example of this that'll stand the test of time, that is the testimony without a doubt, is that when Mr. Obama came into office in January of '09, if you can recall back then, and the country was literally on its knees sweating buckets of sweat. Everything was turned upside down, and we had this huge economic crisis. Was the most horrible thing that was happening that we needed to get taken care of. And we had a war. We had 2 wars going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. What could be more important in that than people serving in the war, getting killed, getting blown up, getting brain injuries and other kinds of permanent life-altering, horrible situations happened to them, and also the economic malaise and stress that was happening. And what did he do at that time, which I pointed out in previous lectures? If this is not unrealistic, I don't know what is. He ignored the economics. He pushed through some kind of stimulus bill, told them, hurry up, hurry up. As it turns out, it wasn't one that would work as a stimulus whatsoever, and we won't get into the details of why. I've explained that, as have other people in previous lectures. And he wasn't paying attention to the war, at least not publicly, and certainly with what happened with McChrystal, we know that he wasn't paying attention to the war. And he started with the health care, pushing people on health care. All this immediate, horrible, necessary stuff for a people that live in a country that have to be led, that need someone to do something and lead the way. He's running around forcing people to hurry up and get on to health care from day one in the cap and trade, and sending billions to the International Monetary Fund, etc. Everything but the needs at hand, because he comes in with an idea, a rigid idea, that he's going to foist his idea of how it's going to be, this great president, what he's going to do, ignoring reality. Didn't even fill the main spots at the Treasury Department, and when people in the Congress at that time in a crisis were needing to know answers to questions they had about this terrible situation, there was no one to come, because he wasn't paying attention to getting those jobs filled so that people could come and supply information regarding economic matters, as were so much needed at the time. And Mr. Obama has made one mistake after another, so many mistakes, and the country and his advisors, etc., they've been extremely lenient. Picture Mr. Bush doing any of this kind of stuff. For that matter, even having a stimulus bill that didn't work, or a very lopsided health care bill, which foolishly, again, unrealistically said to the people that we're going to have 30 more million people insured, but it's not going to change the cost. And by the way, when Mr. Obama was reminded of that, now that we see health care premiums are rising, he said, I never said that. Recently, he said, I never said that. So nobody wants to break it to him. The country likes him, even though he took, as he said, a shellacking in the last election. The polls show, while they do not want what he's been doing to us as a country, they still tend to like him. And then there are maybe the other issues. Maybe there are racial issues. Maybe they think he's a nice guy, whatever it is. But oh, do we go around the perceived faults of Mr. Obama? Nobody wants to tell him. And as far as race goes, I've said in a previous lecture, to persons who are, for example, African American, this was many months ago, my question would be, what have you done for me lately? Not that he has to step down and purposely do something for African Americans, but you know there have been lots of complaints from organizations that represent African Americans saying, yo, we've got unbelievable unemployment in the African American community, and we need you to do something more. And his answer is always sort of that rising water lifts all boats, if you will, and so forth and so on. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying that it's not really a racial thing for him so much as a red thing. And by red, I mean communist. And by communist, I mean progressive, I mean socialist, whatever are the names of late that is applied. There are very many permutations to the idea of communism, Marxism, socialism, and so on. But the color, figuratively speaking, is not black, it's red. And one thing I was looking at the other day was a little bit about the school that Mr. Obama went to in Hawaii when he was a young boy. And that school was a very prestigious school, and most persons in there had an awful lot of affluence, which he did not. And I'm thinking, for one, his is a very complicated psychology. But I'm thinking, for one, that he got this class consciousness from being, growing up for a good part of his life in a situation where people had much more than he, were economically much more wealthy, and this could have played a role. It's also the case that his grandparents, his parents, and every other kind of connection up till the time he becomes president were of Marxist, communist, progressive, call it what you will, persuasion. And dreams from my father certainly would go towards his father's idea of this so-called wealth redistribution. I bring all this up. I've been alarmed as I've watched this presidency happen. I was alarmed when we had Mr. Bush, as was the nation, and you know it was a growing fervor that something's very amiss when it came to a head with that bailout right before the new president came into office, and the people were getting very agitated toward the tail end of Mr. Bush's presidency. And then when they saw Mr. Obama come in and do George Bush 5 times over, do it way more than ever was imagined, take our money and squander it on things they didn't think met the point of what the country needed, they were apoplectic, and they continue to be at this time. So this is a country. You're not here to take your crazy ideas with your sense of grandiosity and unreality, and that you're going to be a great president and you're going to put onto the country whatever you think it should have without asking anybody. This is a country, people's lives, all kinds of lives, poor lives, middle lives, rich lives, black lives, white lives, sick lives, well lives, all kinds of lives are hinging on you, Mr. Obama. You, Mr. Obama. This is not a joke. This is a country. And we depend on our president not to tell us what to do, but to lead us and let us be able to do what we can do. I always have said there's 3 things about Mr. Obama in my many lectures. One is his progressivism, call it what you will, Marxism, call it what you will. The other is this thing with the Muslim religion. I mean, how would it be if he said to the country, I want to be very respectful of the Catholic religion, and he went out of his way, bending over backwards, to lift up a particular religion. Enough with the religion already, and his grandiosity. By grandiosity, we mean this big head, so to speak, this sense of self that's so huge. It's bigger than life. It's bigger than the United States of America. I've maintained that all along. It's a worldview, and in fact, he has a worldview. When he was recently in the foreign countries that he's been in, India and so forth, he was saying in so many words to them, oh, we love that you're coming up and you're competing with us. He has a world idea. Well, don't use our country for your experiment. Go find another one. But it's our particular country with all its wealth and so forth probably that appeals to him to pull back and force this control and coercion onto it of some kind of unrealistic idea that he has in his head. I'm going to talk to you about narcissism of the 44th president. And what do I mean by that? The word narcissism comes from Narcissus, which in Greek mythology is about a person named Narcissus, theoretically, who caught a view of himself in a pond or in some water. And looking at his image reflected in the water, he fell in love with himself. And that's where we get this idea of narcissism. It's about love of self, but it's an abnormal love of self. Most of us don't really love ourselves. Carry on, we have some humility, we have some hang-ups, we have some haughty parts about us, and so on. But, you know, and some people do feel more comfortable and loving of themselves. But I'm talking about here a love of self that's gone off the deep end, that is abnormal and sort of malignant. It's a preoccupation with one's greatness, an inability to feel for other people, and to be inside one's own being as the greatest thing to ever hit the earth. Certain percentage, very small, of people have what's called a narcissistic personality disorder. And I want to see if we can detect in this president something to that effect. The essential features of a narcissistic personality is a pervasive sense of grandiosity, a pattern of, you know, being so great, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, meaning you cannot feel for other people. You're just caught up in yourself, and you're kind of dissociated. When things go bad, especially, you dissociate. You're in denial of reality. You have a rigid view, a sense of yourself, that you're making a mark. Note Mr. Obama's comparisons to Mr. Reagan that he himself made to be transformative, and Kennedy that he himself made. Now, this sense of importance comes without commensurate achievements, and I'll say we've waited before Mr. Obama was president for some achievements. Many people said, hey, this guy has no achievements. What the heck's going on here? And we're certainly waiting for them now still. So, the narcissist is preoccupied and overwhelmed with fantasies of unlimited success, power, and brilliance, believes that he or she is special and unique and gifted and can only be understood by special or high-status people, or people who are superior also in some aspect of life. Remember when he made the comments about people who cling to their guns in the Bible, and, you know, always saying people, you know, kind of are too insignificant and small and basically not as knowledgeable and great as he is to know much of anything. Also, it's been pointed out many times when Obama does give a speech with the teleprompters all the time that the word I is used excessive. People are constantly counting how much everything is I. It's never we, what we're going to do together. I'm going to get you to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to control, too, is a very big part. Then also narcissists insist on having the best of everything, and I will say, this last trip, you know, it was brought out, he was taking 34 warships over to the Indian Ocean. Now, whether the White House denied that, it was the people in India who were getting all the security and plans done that came out with the math of what was going to go on. It's been denied by the White House, but people were writing stories. This is unbelievable, the extravagance, the entourage. Was it 9 planes he took over there, and hundreds of security personnel, and usually those things are handled by the government that's receiving you. He bought the whole hotel, 5-star hotel, all the rooms, in the hundreds, with our money, of course, to stay there, whereas leaders usually buy 1 or 2 floors. It's a very extravagant, and of course we remember the ire that happened when his wife, whom I was appalled at, went to Spain and bought 30 rooms, brought an entourage with her. We never did quite get the numbers on that, and was again at this most exclusive place, and supposedly then later said that some of the stuff won't be paid for by taxpayer. It was an extravagant, when people are suffering, when people have no money, when we're down on we're not down on our luck, we're down on having faulty brains and not knowing enough of what's going on. I've always said about Mr. Obama and the government, watch what he does, watch what they do. Don't watch what he says. Watch what he does. And pretty much you'll find that people who have called themselves to order with protest and defiance against what's going on, if you were to speak with them, you would find, for whatever their opinions are, they are way more informed than the people who just blindly feel good about or fine with the way things are going or who people are. Okay. Now, a narcissist is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Recently, Mr. Rangel was in the news, and it will happen again because he's going to have a sort of trial about alleged ethical violations. Mr. Obama called Mr. Rangel out in public and said he should resign. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? It's another thing. He calls out his enemies, and as you'll see, a narcissist wants to blame. He can't take people doing anything. And Mr. Obama is always trying to make people that he has influence over to quote-unquote walk things back when they do have criticisms. You remember when he tried to get Mr. Sestak to quit the race in Pennsylvania. He tried to get Mr. Mink, an African-American, I thought a pretty nice and pretty good candidate from what little I could tell, tried to get him to quit the Florida race. If you recall, for a senatorship, I believe, told Mr. Rangel to step down. When he first ran in Illinois, he got the seat of Alice Palmer, left the seat for vacated a Senate seat to take a run for the U.S. Senate. When she changed her mind, he wouldn't give it. He said no. She changed her mind. She said no, she's really going to run for the state Senate in Illinois. No, he wouldn't have it. And then he got her disqualified from being a running mate by challenging the signatures she got and got her off the ballot, and so forth and so on. Then you remember how he used the people in the Congress to get his hurry up, do this legislation, even though it's lousy legislation, way too big. It has so many faults to it, crazy, done in the Christmas Eve. Would he have done it if it were Ramadan, I ask you, given his propensity to the Muslim religion? Would he have had the Congress working Christmas Eve of '09, working on these bills and so on? Yeah, he had them, so to speak, walk the plank, and they did. People have an affinity for him. They follow him. He's not really a leader. It's more of a cult. They kind of fall in love with him, or they get under his spell. And lack of empathy. Unwilling to, I recognize, or unable to, really, not unwilling, unable to. Empathy. You know, the old idea, I can feel your pain, supposedly that Bill Clinton used to make people feel that he could feel their pain. So anyway, I'll give you some examples. Washington, D.C., when Mr. Obama took office, there were some high school students who had gotten scholarships and funds to attend charter schools. They were doing great. They loved it. Their parents loved it. That Mr. Obama came in with his school program, another one of his things where he's turning the school system upside down by this push, everything push, but who's handling it? Who's controlling it? Things are getting to be way more of a mess than they even were when he took office. So he has this plan about schools. They begged him, please, at least for us who are in these schools, don't take us out of them. He did. Gulf of Mexico, the people pleaded with him when he went there and visited. They said, could you please come and stop 1 minute? We don't have a hospital, a fully equipped hospital with everything that we need in New Orleans. Nope, nope, no. Then there was a report of when he announced that he was going to be sending more troops to Afghanistan, finally, after delay and not paying attention, not taking care of it, there was a situation where 18 coffins were coming in to the United States. He went there for a photo op against which he could announce what he was going to do in Afghanistan. There were 18. And all he did when he came in, I read the report, he just wanted to take the picture. The parents wouldn't let him that were meeting the coffins. No, 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 you're not going to just take a picture here. Finally, the 18th coffin, they let him. And he just took a picture like he's over there meeting the coffins coming in. Okay. Sets unrealistic goals. If anyone, remember when he said, when John McCain was running around trying to work on this economic thing and people were calling him silly for running to Washington and all that, Obama was sort of saying, you know, that he can walk and chew gum at the same time. He can do all this. Well, they're all a mess. The housing is a mess. The banks are a mess. The country is a mess. Guess what? I don't care if you're Albert Einstein, which he is not. You can't do all these things at once, and it's unrealistic and unsavory and unwise to be doing these big programs in such a half-handed manner. There are worse words for it. What a mess. I am alarmed. People are alarmed. A narcissist also needs to dominate and control the space, to be more special than anyone else, make strong attempts to control others' views of them, and this could have something to do with why he's always on a teleprompter, too. Everything is very, very controlled. I just read a story this very morning that during the Gulf situation, which still goes on, and that's something in and of itself, but when he went to meet Mr. Jindal, who's the governor of that state, he had camera crew ready there when he got off on the tarmac from his plane and to tell Mr. Jindal, tell him he better watch out and not write him any letters saying people need food stamps the way that governor had, giving him hell for it. And when Jindal objected, he's like, hey, this is going to make us look bad. You just listen. He was all concerned, Jindal said in his new book, that how he appears. It was all about how he's going to look to the public. And nothing about, and it's funny, Jindal, and more people are using this, said he wasn't connected to the reality on the ground. He's, in a way, not connected to reality. Sometimes you wonder, when does he ever stay in his office, roll up his sleeves, and really dig in so that he would know how to explain something, and then people would say, aha, now I get it. Now I get it. Instead of, it's not going to cost you any more money to insure 30 million more people. Wrong. You're not going to lose your doctor if you have one. Guess what? Wrong. And so forth and so on. Okay, the narcissist rarely admits to a mistake or wrongdoing. How much have people said, will he admit at least at the election, when he gave his speech about this recent election? They couldn't get him to say that it was a bad thing. He keeps trying to say he didn't communicate that. It's not him. It's not him. Everyone else's fault. And how much does he blame? It's so unbecoming for a president. Usually you have your people out there doing that kind of thing for you. The president of the United States should never be having a petty way of pointing out and criticizing private people or institutions when he stands at the podium representing the United States of America. The idea behind all of a narcissism is that a narcissist basically can feel inferior deep inside, and there's a dynamic which I can't go into explaining today, but sometimes when you feel really like nothing, you make yourself, as you develop, into something that feels really superior. And that when a narcissist who is hypersensitive, they're known to be, and everybody's saying all the time, even the people that are with him, that he's very thin-skinned. Hypersensitive, they feel rejected, humiliated, and threatened when criticized. And recently, when he was overseas and he was getting questions that sort of, were critical of him or what's been happening, with trade and the currency now, that we're going through a terrible thing with what he's having the Treasury do to the dollar, which means devalue it, which means the cost of our living is going to keep on going up like crazy, another mess we will have inherited. But he was really testy and faulting them. He throws it back at the people with a nasty tone. So this is not good. And a narcissist feels extremely arrogant. When Mr. Bloomberg first visited with him briefly, I think it was when he was on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, he had a few minutes with Mr. Obama. He came away saying he'd never met such an arrogant person in his whole life. So, and you know, the narcissist is on the move doing stuff, but when you really look at it, this is not just Mr. Obama. They come out with really very little you can say was a real and good accomplishment. Try to come across as perfect. They need to exhibit themselves, and they need admiration. And you know what, too, I was thinking, as have other people, when are you going to get off the TV? They've pulled him away a bit because they finally realized. He was on for months, morning, noon, night, in the middle of the night. He was on. The president's got to say this. But really, nothing you could take to the bank. He makes announcements how it's going to be. Well, this is going against the grain of a lot of people in this country. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't act ingratiatingly or, you know, nice and smooth when he wants to in order to achieve his goals. But basically, this is what you see through the cracks as time goes on. You see more of what really is going on. Narcissism is distinguished from true leadership, because true leadership shares the attention. If you're a true leader, you want to bring the people with you. You don't want to tell them how it's going to be. You don't want to do all the plans the way he has done with making czars, with going around the way things are usually done, with doing a lot of unseemly kind of deals. And in case you think he's clean of that kind of stuff, which of course politicians mostly never are, he certainly is not. Just recently, I could go on with a huge list of how he does politics, and it's not pretty. But just recently, for example, Google, probably the richest corporation in the world, I guess, by stock value, I think, recently, they were faulted for taking people's private data and I guess selling it or exchanging it, which is against the law. And they were being investigated just recently by the Justice Department. Meanwhile, they're very close to Mr. Obama. They were just at a fundraiser, $30,000 a person to be in it. And soon after that, guess what? Justice Department dropped the investigation into Google's transgression against the privacy data of people. Okay, and of course, Mr. Obama and narcissists who are in top positions, especially, they want to control the information. Maybe that's why the teleprompter. Also, he doesn't do so well without it, if you notice. And really, he doesn't speak really completely like a progressive or a capitalist. He's got a very weird, weird ideas when you really listen. If there are the moments when he speaks that he's not using a teleprompter. He's got to control information, the rules, and the process for participating in life. We did a show on Cuba recently, and I got another one coming about it. It showed you, kind of gave you a flavor of what happens when everybody's under the control of a dictator. And really, certainly the country has great inequity and between people who are rich, people who are poor, people in the middle. And certainly this is a matter for some thoughtful concern, but it's a matter that we should all be thinking about together. And some people in the country, many, I would say most, don't really begrudge wealth. And I'm not saying people should get so enormously wealthy as an Oprah or as a Bill Gates, billionaires. You know, I'm not sure, I don't believe people should. But this is not for one person in an unrealistic mind to just try to remake a society, because the way it's being remade and the mess that we are in now, everybody's going to be so much worse off. Everybody, if this continues. And who's going to pay the bills? Somebody has to pay the bills. So it's very short-sighted for one person to be trying to do this, and very not nice to a country. And some people, however, especially these progressives, I've noticed, that you will find on Huffington Post and Politico and so on, they seem to be very disturbed that some people have more than others in a sort of angry, jealous ways. No, it's not right. And people do not get paid enough who do a job, let's say, as a cashier at Stop and Shop. Or you name the job. No, there is not pay equity that, for example, compared to a baseball player and so forth and so on. But this is something for us to discuss, and just because it is a concern doesn't mean that we're jealous and we want to make sure that we cut off the heads of the people that enjoy the affluence. Okay. Now, let's look at a long list, and as I've said many times, this list could go on and on and on, with some of the lack of empathy, unrealism, not being in reality, dissociative ways, grandiosity. Let's look at some of them. Now, is it just a lie, or is it a delusion or an illusion or an unrealistic thing for Mr. Obama to have said, which he did, and it was right on his website when he was running for president, that he has never practiced the Muslim faith? Well, we now know very well, by many accounts from Indonesia, that when he lived there, he did indeed study the Quran, he did indeed go to mosque, and so forth and so on. Now, call it what you will. Call it what you will. At one point when he was discussing himself many months ago, he happened to say, my Muslim faith. People picked up on that. I believe he corrected himself, but he happened to say, my Muslim faith, where in fact he said he had never practiced the Muslim faith. He said in this crazy bill, this health care bill, everybody wants to have pre-existing conditions not an issue in health care. What else? Even, of course, many people want universal health care, as do I. The public option was denied from the very first day. People who were supporters, physicians, many of them, who had studied this issue and believe in a public option, were not even allowed into the room to speak when the hearings began on this health care bill. So people want universal health care. They don't want the kind of monstrosity and government control over their lives that this and crazy bill that this bill brings us to. So now, and then in doing the stimulus bill, that also done in a hurry, also the health care too, push, hurry, anything, and the stimulus, hurry, first day, so crazy. Mr. Obama went around saying that there would be a lot of shovel-ready projects in that bill. As you know, recently he said, oh, there's no such thing as shovel-ready. Oh, of course there is. Does he even know, is there shovel-ready? Is there not shovel-ready? Now that these projects haven't really seemed to turn out and bring people jobs, the fact of the matter is most of the bill of $862 billion, practically $1 trillion, does not, for the most part, address economic stimulus. It paid to have people keep their jobs, it paid for government workers to stay in their position, and any number of things, but very little in the way of incentivizing and making job creation happen. Then Guantanamo, the unrealism. He said, oh, we're going to close Guantanamo. What happened to that idea? A heck of a lot harder than they thought. Remember, it was supposed to be closed within the year. Well, that year has come and gone. Then he said, we're going to withdraw from Afghanistan. And if you read anything of the reports about how that Afghanistan thing went down, this guy McChrystal, who got fired after all the events happened, is never hearing from Mr. Obama. I mean, if you're the president and you have black and white military people out, I mean, imagine that. Putting themselves, how can you sleep at night? They're out there getting maimed and killed and every other thing in horrible, horrible conditions, freezing cold up in the mountains in Afghanistan and so on, with no comforts built into the situation. And nothing's being done. He's not on the phone every day with the big generals. He's not apparently in communication till this guy speaks out finally and loses his job. If you remember how it went down, you know, starts making some nasty comments. But it ends up that months go by, nothing's being said or done, and one day, because this guy McChrystal says something, not the final things he said, but he made some comment. This is what Obama always does. He meets him when he's on his trip to Copenhagen, I think. And what about that? The Copenhagen, the World Games, the Olympic, what a crazy thing that was, but never mind that for the moment. He meets him on the tarmac in London in a plane for 25 minutes, a guy he never speaks to, probably to call him out, as it was reported, for criticizing him, for saying something critical. Then it takes him another 3 months. And then, of course, McChrystal allows that Rolling Stone reporter to hear a lot of the comments he makes about the administration, and he loses his job, and now we have, I believe it's General Petraeus. But come on, this is a war. What could be more important than the country going to hell economically, people not having jobs, severely more so in the African American community, and a war in Iraq and a war in Afghanistan going on, and kind of like, oh, wouldn't you constantly be finding out and knowing what's going on and being in touch with your generals? Then there was Lockerbie, the Lockerbie bomber who took down the plane that killed so many people in Scotland. And Libya wanted him released to Libya. Anyway, the guy did get released, caused the people who lost people to be very upset. He got to be out of prison and live his life in Libya, got a hero's welcome. When this happened and he got released, Mr. Obama says publicly, oh, he didn't know anything about it. Then the British government says, you certainly did. You were in on it from the start. And then we find out many weeks later that the U.S. actually sent a letter to Britain about it saying, yeah, it would be okay and do X, Y, and Z. This is the 44th president, just in case you think. Some of it is like unreality, though. Some of it is unreality. And by the way, many people have said he's more Bush than Bush. His Patriot Act is more severe. He wants to have free wiretapping into all phone conversations, all internet. He's way more. All the state secrets, we can't give you information. He's gone even further. He denies intelligence information to the Congress people in the House and the Senate who are in the committees where they're supposed to oversee intelligence and you're supposed to send them. He has not been on one thing after another. He does not send over the intelligence information. He is more Bush than Bush. And you know, when I read that Huffington Post, where all these progressives line up, and I read it every day they say, oh, the president didn't do this. Oh, the president's going to try to wiretap. You know, all of this is bad, but they stick with him. Is it because they find no other leader they feel will do their bidding? What is the reason? They never say, that's it. A few have. A few are changing right now. But they never say, that's it. We're done with this guy. No, they don't say that. This guy has gotten so much slack. Imagine a Bush, imagine a Clinton with any of these things, any of them. He said that he would speak out about Armenia, the genocide of Armenia, that he would publicly acknowledge it was a genocide. He went to Turkey, which were the genociders that perpetrated the deed in theory, and he would not mention Armenia, would not. That's how he does too. He doesn't quite do this, he doesn't quite do that. And if you remember, his record always, especially in the state legislature in Illinois, was always mostly present, present, present. He never said he was for something. He never said he was against it. I'm going to portray for you a picture of a guy with this whole idea of what reality is, setting it up for himself, setting it up in the way that's going to make Obama for Obama. Obama said he was for animal rights. Well, I've been in touch with some high-ranking executives in major organizations who tell me to a person he has been a huge disappointment on animal issues. The oil spill. How dare he talk about cap and trade, which is a very horrible idea and really has nothing to do with the environment. If that should ever happen, you will really be getting it stuck to you. You will be paying through the nose another form of control over you. But presumably it's supposed to be for the environment, and everybody knows, for me anyway, I've been on the environment since decades ago. So much so that I have to deny it because it makes me just want to drop dead. It's so bad, the environment. Here's a president of the United States. Here's a figure of the world in an office that can do anything that it sees fit to do. And pouring into the Gulf of Mexico, our oceans, the world's oceans, human beings' oceans, United States' oceans. This guy stays out of the way for 9 days, doesn't even come out and say anything, and his handlers on MSNBC are saying, oh, he feels, they think it's okay, he feels that if he associates with this, it'll be stuck with him, so he's staying away from it. Here our ocean, the world's oceans, our food supply, the vitality and health of ourselves and the ocean and the sea life and our food, etc., 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 is going down the tube. And here's a guy saying, again, the public image, I don't want to be associated with that. Then he tries to, then he has to go down there reluctantly. So he stays a little bit. I think he went a couple of times. Somebody asked him, hey, why aren't you whatever doing more? He said, I stood in the rain. I remember the day, it was like a mist. I stood in the rain down there, kind of like, what else did you want me to do? Oh, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. It's only the very planet's life and existence. How much can this guy feel? Of all these things I'm telling you, the most outrageous, most calumny, the biggest calumny against humanity and against the people is the situation as regards the president with the oil spill. The government lied about how much oil, constantly lied. Never mind BP, the government lied. And the government lied about shutting down the deep sea oil drill. Remember, he shut them all down and thousands of people lost their job. They said, please, please. Why did he have to shut the other ones down? They were already I'm an environmentalist. Would I be so foolish as to shut the other ones down? He put a review in front of some scientists what to do. They said it could be more dangerous to shut them down midstream than to leave them operating as they are. It's just come out in the news, which I knew already from other reports, but it's been more public. His people edited it to read that the scientists were favorable to shutting them down. the deep sea drilling. And his affiliation with BP, by the way, this whole cap and trade nonsense with GE would be in on, Goldman Sachs, his very main buddy corporations. BP was one of the original sponsors right on with this cap and trade thing, which we don't have time to get into today. And what kind of a deal do you think he made with them when he went for that $20 billion thing, which is nowhere near what is, there's no price you can put on what's happening. You will even see some video images here. What is happening? The Gulf is dead, it's dying, and it's going far and wide. It's already gone far and wide. This is no joke. This is a world catastrophe. You won't hear a word about it. It's dirty, it's oil. It's not a good image. The government said the oil is gone. You'll see on here, the oil is not gone in October and November, and how it's very much at the bottom. And the poison that was allowed to be used, that is so, even the gas and the oil alone is so detrimental to health of what's in the ocean and what's out of the ocean. But the dispersant they used, Correxic, if you can even measure these things, is even more poisonous and toxic to everything that lives. And never mind the suffering of the animals that couldn't breathe, that are slowly have to die away in pathetic, agonizing ways. He said, oh, Bill Ayers was just a guy in the neighborhood. Anybody can find out now by research. And I'm saying broad and wide research, how much involvement he had with this person. He said he didn't know Mr. Wright had the views that he had. As most people say, they could have been in that church one time for 5 minutes and found out the views that he had. Never mind calling him his mentor and being there 20 years, getting his kids baptized and so forth. Never mind. Okay, all of his records are sealed. You know how I said before that, you know, a narcissist is all about a lot doing, but not real accomplishment. What is he afraid of us seeing? Everything is sealed. What he took in school, what kind of grade, his medical records are sealed. Everything is sealed, and he won't allow it. And as far as the birth certificate goes, I have no idea if that is a real issue or not. But I do know that there is a kind of birth certificate in Honolulu, in Hawaii, that is called an original birth certificate, a live birth certificate, so to speak. And this one has never been presented. And just a while ago, I think it was Jake Tapper of ABC asked Mr. Gibbs, his spokesperson, what about that original? Why can't he show us that one? And Mr. Gibbs changed the subject. And of course, Mr. Obama's team has spent money for people that are challenging it, and it continues to be in court, and he continues to defend to not have to show it. There were discrepancies of where he met Michelle in things he said that people noticed. You know, there were some discrepancies. Remember when he says, I'm not a socialist? How's that for unreality? If he's not a socialist, I'd like to see what a socialist is. Unions, why is he so union? Union, he wants to make everything union. He wants to put doctors into unions. Let me tell you something. At least in my generation and the several that are behind me, I don't know about the very new ones, people that go to be doctors, for the most part, do so because they want to be independent. That's not their drive. They're very independent. They don't want to be yoked to a union. No, doctors and unions generally don't fit. Doctors are very like self-propagating people. They're going to do something that they want to do, research, whatever it is. So why does Mr. Obama get this whole thing union? Because if you follow the pattern he's doing, it's a way to have everything under his control. The more people are unionized, the more he's got them. And the guy who's been to the White House, at least as of last year, more than anybody, Andy Stern, who now has quit his post as the SEIU head, has a very bad record of making deals with corporations that are better that are good for the corporation and not so good for the union members that he was heading. And there's been a lot of griping, you know, of how Andy Stern, who's been very close, in fact, Stern got a position on this fiscal deficit commission that is supposedly working on how we're going to change our spending to make our deficits come down. A civilian force that Mr. Obama has proposed and has started to enact, that we have a civilian force to do what? In the United States that is as big and as powerful as the military. For what? So that we can do telling on people the way his website said when healthcare was all the rage, that if you know people that are saying things about healthcare, to give us their phone number, give us their name, give us their website. The NEA, the National Endowment for Arts, someone was having a conference with artists where he was telling them that the Obama administration is going to have the themes for the artists to do when they get the grants. Everything is towards what Mr. Obama has as an idea for this country, against which many people are revolting and refuse to fall prey to. Yes, and this was found out. One of the people in on the conversation let it be known, and that whole thing was busted. But many government agencies are being used in this manner. In fact, the Democrats have been complaining. I read these articles on the Huffington Post, Politico. I read other too, but they're complaining too that this Mr. Obama is making himself his own organization, separate from the Democrats. And he's not, they're saying, in the beginning they were saying, hey, why aren't you out there for all of us? And they're noticing that he's like developing his own offshoot, his own thing, because this is Obama for Obama. Kenya election. Do you know that our government has been reported, they recently had an election in Kenya, a constitutional vote. And the vote would bring in the Constitution, abortion would be possible, and Sharia law in some sections of Kenya. Kenya is mostly a Christian nation. Some of our money reportedly has been spent, which is against the law. The against the laws are long. This is another one. I remember eerie detachment. The narcissist is dissociated and like detached. And I remember when Mr. Obama was flying around during the campaign, this guy, Evan Thomas, who's certainly favorable to him, a Newsweek guy I think he is, said he would notice how Obama would be, it was kind of creepy, he said he'd see Obama watching people watching him. People have noticed that he's detached, and you know, you've heard that too. Like when the Gulf happened, they were like, people were like, and then everybody was saying, oh, he can't empathize and so on. You know, he's detached. He's detached. You couldn't feel it. I remember reading an article by a lady who had family either from Pan Am or the 9/11 situation, terrorist situation, fall prey to that. And she was in with some people. They had a meeting. This was many months ago. And she said how after a while he just stares, he's detached. She was favorable to him. She was an Obama supporter. She wondered if he was listening. He just seemed distant. She didn't know if anything after a while was even sinking in. And other people have talked about this because he's got his own concept of what reality is and what controls and what he's going to do about reality. As an aide pointed out recently too, that if there's an issue and it doesn't get resolved in 45 minutes, Obama just walks out of the room. If it's not resolved, he just walks out. Now, what kind of thing is that? Do you know he walked out on, you can have a pro or anti-Israel, whatever your stand, this is not the point. When Netanyahu came to Washington one time, Obama walked out on him, left him there standing. Who else has he done this with? He did it. He sort of gave the shaft to the British Prime Minister when he came early on in Obama's presidency, and so forth and so on. People who work with and from other countries regarding things that have to get done with the United States say decisions aren't getting made, the emissaries don't have the authority they should have to do so, and a lot of issues are going unaddressed, just like waiting months to address the war. Further, when Mr. Obama was on his recent trip to India, in order to see the Gandhi Museum, he had our people build a tunnel that's more than 1 kilometer long that included air conditioning for him to have a protection at the last mile or so to get into the museum. And our people had to build it and dismantle it, in addition to the whole entourage that he took with him that I was talking about. And speaking of grandeur and grandiosity, he did the same thing when he was in Kenya. Last year when he went on the when he went on the China trip last year, people were marveling that, hey, there was not a heck of a lot going on substantively to this China trip, but this huge entourage of vehicles and vehicles, like people were saying, what is this? What is this? They hadn't seen this kind of great grandeur. And you remember the Roman columns in Colorado when he was having his victory party. You remember the big speech in Europe, you know, a person of the world, the United States, his convenient stepping stone, and being a person kind of like a stone himself that, if you've ever done this, it skims across the water, you throw it at a horizontal angle to the water, and it kind of flies further and further, never really sinking in. He went to Kenya. I saw a video of this in maybe 2006, I believe it was. Same thing, entourage, pull in, the people are cheering, the big entourage event. By the way, too, one of his great supporters who wrote a book about him, I forgot with whom, the two people wrote the book, Halperin, who's on MSNBC all the time, reports in that book that during the campaign, Mr. Obama had said that given how arduous the campaign was, governing should be easy. He thought governing was going to be easy compared to the campaign. I say to you, does that suggest realism? Remember when Mr. Obama was giving shout-outs and kind of semi-jovial when the cameras came on him and he was prepared to announce that we had lost 13 people and I think 32 or so totally casualties, 13 actually dead, others wounded at Fort Hood. Do you remember that sad day where when the news broke and Obama was there to tell us, he spent 3 minutes joking around before he said it? How about that he instructed government agencies to not use, to eliminate the word jihad or Islamic terror from any documents whatsoever? Is there an unreality in that? How about when Ms. Napolitano became the homeland? This is not a homeland, by the way. Germany is a homeland. The word homeland came from Bush, another lousy legacy. But homelands are kind of where people's ancestry resides as in an ethnic or cohesive group. This is a place of all people. This is a country. This is not really a homeland. But anyway, as Napolitano took over her job, one of the first things she did was send around a memo saying who to watch out for in the United States, where our terrorists or security problems would come from. It had everything in there. It had returning military, right-wing militia, black rights groups. Everything except Islamic terrorists were in that document that was given to all the police departments as to what to watch out for in the United States security. And you know what? Why do people have theories about Obama? Because if you watch what he does, not what he says, if you watch what he does, you're hard-pressed to put it together. And that's where they come up with, and some of it actually probably is a good guess, because you can't make sense of it. You cannot make sense a lot of what is going on. The other thing, too, you see, on the radio now, it's all successively timed to come in as people get around to it and got it going. A lot of ads on the radio for government, government, government. Go to this government site to find out everything you ever need to do or know about your life, that it's all going to come through the government. And we built on a legacy of doing for oneself, governing oneself, and making it possible that we can do and be all that we ever would want. Is the opposing force and thrust and sentiment and motivation of persons lined up against the circumstance and controls and destruction and damage that has been occurring for the past, let's see, 12, we're in the 11th month, 23 months now, 22, 23 months. I leave it to you to see whether in fact we detect narcissism, whether in fact there is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, when there is a need for admiration, when there is a lack of empathy, and when there is a rigid, predisposed concept of control and management of a population. And I say, find yourself another country, although this country is exactly the right one that sticks in some people's craw and is being used in the manner I just described. The takeaway from all of this would be, in sum, that Obama is for Obama, and that there is an echo from everything that has come before, all the suffering, all the people's work, that it's not too late.
It's fun and it's warm, it's a cosmic powwow. It's fun and it's warm, it's a cosmic powwow. Cosmic powwow, cosmic powwow, cosmic powwow.